Hello everyone, in this video I will talk about OOP concept. What is OOP concept? OOP stand for Object Oriented Programming. Why we use OOP? So there are several factors. Object Oriented Programming is used to make software more organized, more maintained and more reuse or scale. Okay, so that's it. Now there are 5 main part of OOP. Okay, so all over Python you have to say that Python emphasizes readability and developer productivity. So okay, that's it. Now let's talk about all the pillars of OOPs. Okay, first is class. Let's talk about class. What is class? Of course, class is a blueprint or template of creating objects. Now let's talk about class. A class is a collection of objects. Class are blueprints for creating objects. A class defines a set of attributes and methods that the created objects can have, right? So let's talk. So people might ask, what is class? Just simply say that it is a blueprint or template. It is a blueprint or template for creating objects, right? A class defines a set of a set of attributes, of course, and methods. That the created objects can have, or that our object will have. Simply will have. Okay, so now what is attributes? By the way, attributes are just variables that belongs to a class, and attributes are always public and can be accessed using dot operator, right? Like my class dot my attribute, in that way. So let's talk a bit more about class. There are a lot of concepts there. Now there are also okay. So for example, like if we write class dog sound bark, so we created a class and a class attribute, right? Also there are object attribute, which is like okay, we will talk about this when we discuss the init method. Okay, so what is a constructor? What is okay What is INIT? So it is basically a constructor. It is a constructor that runs automatically when a new object is created, right? It used to initialize the object's attribute. It used to initialize objects data or objects attribute, you can see. So this is INIT. It's a constructor that runs automatically when a new object is created. It used to initialize objects attribute. Okay, so now you can understand more about what is class attribute, what is object attribute. But before that, let's talk about what is self, because self is there. So let's talk about that. So self parameter refers to the current object of a class, simply. Okay, so it used to access the attributes and methods that belongs to access attributes and methods that belong to that object. So self parameter refers to the current object of a class, simply. It used to access attributes and methods that belongs to the object. How? Because self is actually referring to that current object. How? I will also discuss it. So let's talk about that. And also remember, it's not a keyword. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that. How it looks like. So let's write a program. Class card color black. Div init. Here we are initializing the constructor. Div init self price or like So here we will write self dot price and self dot model. Then we will call the function. We create a object 1 and we will call the function. We will call the object, create object actually, sorry. How we will create the object? Object 1 equal to car. Then let's write like price will be 20 lakh. Okay, although it is an integer. So, and the price and the model is something like pens. So this is the, so here this is the object. So self is referring to the object. Okay, so every time self is created, it's always referring to new objects. These are object instance or objects attributes, and this is same constant which is class attribute. Okay, so if there are questions, first of all, why do we use init? Why do we use constructor? So we use it first of all to initialize object attribute, to set default values, to perform setup tasks when object is created. Okay, so now let's talk about class and object attribute. What is class attribute? So what is class attribute? Class attribute is defined. It is defined inside the class, not outside methods, and shared all objects. So basically shared by all objects of the class. So class attribute actually is shared by all objects of the class, while instance attribute, I have write object attribute, this will be instant attribute. You can also call it object attribute, instance attribute. What is instant attribute? It is defined inside the init or the constructor. Okay, so it is defined inside self using self. It is defined inside init and it by using self, and it is unique for each, because here we are writing 20 lakh. On the other, we might write that we might write 30 lakhs or different model. So that's why this is always instance attributes always changeable. So that is unique for every objects, right? Where color, like if we write the color, it's always black for every car, no matter what the model or the price. So this is something which is class attribute. This is always shared by all the objects, while instance attribute is unique for each, and it is inside, it is it is defined inside identity. Okay, init. And then there is a concept. There's I think where okay, so there is also one concept. Let's talk about static method. Okay. What is static method? So let's talk about that. A static method is a method that belongs to a class but does not use instance variable. Instance variables means self or class variables. So basically this is this is individual class variables. This is a separate thing. So static method is a method defined inside a class that doesn't depend on any instance or class data. It is used when a function logically belongs to a class but does not need to access to self or series. Static method help organize related utility functions inside a class without creating objects. So for example, let's write so it is also decorator. It is also called as decorator. So let's give an example. Class, my class. Static method, we have to write it. Okay, and then we write a function. Then the function like add. If we write like add, then return a plus b my class dot add 2, 3. This is the way we write class name, then the function name. Okay, class name and function name, not this way. Static method. So if we don't write this, like if we simply just define a class and then we just simply create a function and then we want to call the function like print result. So what will happen? It will give an error. Why it will give an error? Because we have to define it. If we are defining any function, we have to use self, but the static method is a method that belongs to a class but doesn't use any instance, that doesn't use any self variable, okay, instance variable or self or class data. So then there we have to use static method. It is an individual separate function. So then we can write it, we can get the result. Okay. Okay. So a better definition is that a static method is a method that belongs to a class but does not operate on instance, belongs to a class but does not use or operate on instance or class data. Okay, instance or class data. It is declared, of course it is declared using @static method. Okay, static method decorator. So I think we have covered these topics of important topics. Okay, and I think one thing that is left is operator overloading. So let's talk a bit about that. What is operator overloading? Operator overloading is a process of giving special meaning to operators for using user-defined objects by implementing magic methods such as add, sub, or equal. So, operator overloading is a feature that allows to define how operators behave for object class. Okay. So there are operator overloading methods like add or subtract, sub or multiplication or equal. Several operator overloading methods. Okay. Like for example, so definition is that operator overloading is a process of giving special meaning to operators. For user-defined objects by implementing magic method such as add, subtract, or equal. So this is what it is. Operator overloading is a process of giving special meaning to operators for user-defined objects by implementing magic methods. So like this is a, like you can give example like here if you write here we can use a function called it will be present here, of course. Okay, so it will be present here. It will be present there, of course. Also, like we create like def add. This is self will be pass, and there will be other, and then return self dot other. We will discuss. The place is not that clear to understandable. We will discuss it later. Okay. This is simply nothing. This is just like here we will just compare. Okay. There will be a function just like this. There will be a function like this. There will be def init. Suppose there is no model, so there is just price. So self. So we'll simply write self dot price. Okay, equal to price, and then there we also create a function called add, and there we also give some parameters self and marks or other price or price 2. Then we will write price 2 greater than self dot price 2 greater than self dot price 1 self dot price. In this way, this is what it is. If we have time, we will also discuss about this. Okay. Let's talk about object. Let's talk about object. Okay. What is object? I think we have already discussed about that. But again, I am covering this topic. Object is an instance of class. It represents a specific implementation of the class, holds its own data. An object consists of state, behavior, and identity. Creating object. Okay. We have already discussed how we create an object. Okay. So basically, what is object? Object is an instance of class which acts as a blueprint for creating object. Let me share the definition. Object is an object is an instance of a class. It is a real entity created from a class that contains its own data and can use methods to define the class. So an object is an instance of a class that has its own instance of a class which has its own attributes and can access the method defined in the class. So an object is an instance of a class. An object is an instance of a class which has its own attributes and can access the method defined in the class. Okay. So So a short example: class student def INIT self common name simply if you write Shoma. So this is object, this is the object, and this is the class, right? So and the self is referring or addressing towards the object, not in this is also referring to the object. So class, so object is an instance of a class, right? And which has its own attributes like this, and can access the method defined in the class. So today we discuss up to that. Next day we will also discuss about inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation. Okay, bye bye.